Hello, this is Trek with Peace Corps Ghana. We are the education cohort. I'm here with Halle. Hello, Halle. How are you?
I'm fine, Trek. How are you?
I'm good. All right, we're going to talk about Practicum. Halle, what is Practicum?
So Practicum is where us as Peace Corps trainees are sent to local senior high schools and junior high schools to practice teaching. It's a 2-week period where we are expected to lead full Ghanaian classes. So,
And where is it in the PC life cycle?
it started after our first 2 weeks in country, and it goes for 2 weeks. So we're about a month in almost now. And it's kind of after we've gone through some of our basic language and safety and cultural training. Once we've kind of got a handle on how things work here, they then let us go out and teach.
So it's a practice for the real life struggle when you are a teacher, because that's
Yes.
what you'll be doing, right?
Yes, exactly. So they don't want us to go to our site and have never had an experience in a Ghanaian classroom because it's very different from an American classroom. So they want us to get a handle on things before we start.
So how is it different?
Well, the lack of resources is for one. In an American classroom, it's pretty easy to get the things you need to teach. For example, magnets to teach magnetic field, or computers. You have computers and books and just a lot of other things they don't have here.
Even paper is hard to come by.
Yes, even paper. For a couple of things I taught this week, I needed some paper, and I had to bring my own because I knew students wouldn't have any. So,
All right, tell us more about your classes.
this week I taught junior high school, Form 1 and 2 integrated science. The JHS is broken up into 3 forms. I think of them as almost a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
Right.
Very similar. So I taught the 6th and 7th grade equivalent. In each form has different levels of science. So my Form 1, I taught physical and chemical changes of matter and basic electronics. And my Form 2, I taught machines and force and pressure. There were a lot of challenges I had with that because
Wait, before you move on, how many students are in your classes?
There are 35 students in my Form 1, and there are 42 in my Form 2.
It's more than you'd see in an American classroom.
Yes, it's a lot of students, but there are teachers here with us in our cohort who have 80 or 90 students in their class.
Wow.
It's a lot. It's quite a lot.
All right, and what do you teach specifically?
Specifically, I'm a math teacher, but for Practicum, they have us do both math and science if you're a math or science teacher.
So you mean you'll be swapping at some point?
Yes, since this week I taught science, next week I will be teaching math.
All right, perfect. All right, now you can continue to talk about the struggle.
All right, so for example, I taught my Form 1's basic electronics, resistors, capacitors, inductors, batteries, switches, things like that, and I had absolutely no reference materials. I didn't have pictures of those devices. I didn't have those devices themselves. I couldn't get internet to bring those to them. It's just, you don't have those materials, so teaching it was very difficult because it is an abstract concept, and teaching abstract things without resources is hard. So at least what I did in my classes is I tried to relate those materials to things they would understand in everyday life. For example, I related capacitors to being temporary batteries in a circuit, or resistors to being like a faucet where water's flowing, and the bigger the resistor, the more you're turning the faucet, less electricity or water. So just trying to relate things that way, but there are a lot of challenges going on with that. It's hard when you don't have resources. But
All right. Anything else you want to share about your challenges?
The language barrier is a problem. So for all of our students, English is not their first language. They speak Twi or Ewe or another local dialect first. So you are trying to teach in a language that is not their first language. I know personally that if someone was trying to teach me new science concepts in Twi at this point, I would have no idea what's going on. So one of those struggles is the language barrier. Some teachers will teach their language or teach their lesson in English, and then at the end have a student they know understands explain their lesson in the local language. That works. For me, every time I introduce something new, I write it on the board. And I write all of my questions, I ask them on the board. because they can read English better, they can speak it.
And that slows down the class a lot too, right?
It does slow down the class. You have to go very slowly. There are things I thought would take maybe 10 minutes to explain, and it took 30 or 40. You have to go very slow. And it really is the language issue. Something else I tried to do my last few days is I spoke with a Ghanaian accent. Even though that seems somewhat silly, it really helped them understand, because their teachers, their Ghanaian teachers, speak with a Ghanaian accent in English. So they're used to that cadence and the way words are said, so that definitely helped.
Can we hear that out of curiosity?
Oh, no. I can't do it right when you're asking me to.
All right, how do Ghanaian classrooms compare to American ones?
The class size is definitely bigger. The kids are much better behaved, honestly. I'm not that old, so I remember high school and junior high. It wasn't that long ago. And Ghanaian students are much better behaved. Obviously, they're still talkative and chatty, and they can kind of get into trouble just like any kid their age. But when you walk in the room, they all stand to greet you. They say yes, madam, or yes, sir, to everything you say. And it's a very different culture of a classroom. An American classroom can be very rowdy, and they maybe don't want to listen, and they don't have the same respect for teachers that we do, but it's very different. You want me to talk about?
If you want to.
So also here in Ghana, students are caned. It is illegal to cane students in Ghana. The Ghana Education Service has mandated you are not allowed. The Ghanaian government has said that you are not allowed to cane students, but it still happens. So students in our classes are very afraid of giving wrong answers. When my first day of class, when I would ask them a question, no one would raise their hand. No one wanted to answer because they were afraid that if they got the wrong answer, I would cane them. So it's been very tricky getting them to open up and answer questions because they are afraid of being punished, which is unfortunate, but it does happen. So dealing with that was hard, and even seeing it, not me personally, but other volunteers have seen it happen, and it's not pleasant. So.
Okay, last question. How are you holding up?
Peace Corps is wonderful, but it has some really low lows and some really high highs. That's what I've come to understand. So my first class, I felt just awful afterwards. Even though I knew I had covered what I wanted to, I felt like I just hadn't gotten to the level of understanding I wanted. So I felt really awful. There's some chicken. My second class went a lot better, and I felt like my students were really kind of getting to where I wanted them to be, so I felt great. And those have been with my Form 1 students. My third class was with my Form 2s, and they are absolutely awful. And they're not bad kids, but they were afraid of me. They were afraid of answering my questions, and they didn't want to do what I wanted them to. So it's been a roller coaster. It's just up and down all the time. Right now, I feel pretty good, but sometimes you just kind of feel crappy. But that's a lot to do with everything being different. Nothing is what you expect it to be. Nothing is like you want it to be. And everything that can go wrong kind of will. So it's up and down all the time.
All right. Thanks, Halle.
All right. Yay.
Bye.
Bye.